Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I've got an epic story that's going to take you on a wild ride. This one's got it all. Betrayal, determination, and a whole lot of sweet, sweet justice. It all started 24 years ago in Columbus, Ohio. I was 17-year-old Brianna, a high school senior with big dreams. I was head over heels in love with Ethan, and we'd been together for a while, but then I found out I was pregnant. Scared out of my mind, I knew I had to tell my parents, Gregory and Susan. My family was well off, but they were also super strict. Gregory was a big shop businessman, always worried about his reputation. Susan was the queen of the local social scene, more concerned with appearances than anything else. The night I told them, the dining room was filled with an eerie silence. The air was thick with the smell of a half-cooked roast, and the tension was so palpable you could cut it with a knife. I took a deep breath and spilled the beans. Gregory just stared at me, his eyes cold as ice. Susan looked away, like she couldn't bear to see me. Gregory finally spoke. His voice was low and menacing. "You've ruined this family name, Brianna. Do you have any idea what you've done to our standing in the city?" I tried to explain that Ethan and I were going to be responsible, that I just needed their support to finish school. But Gregory wasn't having it. 10 minutes, he said. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a $50 bill, and threw it at my feet. "Take this and get out. If you walk out that door, you're no longer a part of this family. You're nothing to us." I looked at my mom, tears in my eyes, hoping she'd step in. But she just stood up, walked over to the fireplace, and turned our family photo face down. That was the moment I knew my life as I knew it was over. I walked out into the pouring rain, a single trash bag filled with a few clothes in my hand. I was soaked to the bone in seconds. I stood on the porch, listening to the lock click behind me, the sound echoing in my ears like a death knell. I looked down at the $50 bill in the mud. That was the price they put on my life. I ended up at a bus station and caught a ride to Seattle. I was alone, scared and pregnant. I found a cheap motel, and that's where I met Evelyn. She was the motel owner, a tough-as-nails woman with a heart of gold. She found me collapsed in the hallway, clutching my stomach. Without asking any questions, she wrapped me in a warm blanket and sat me down with a cup of hot tea. I told her my whole story. I said I was a mistake, a disappointment. But Evelyn looked at me with those kind eyes and said, "Brianna, they didn't throw you away. They're just losing the privilege of watching you shine. From this moment on, you belong to the woman you're going to become." Those words gave me a newfound strength. I decided then and there that I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to thrive. Evelyn took me in and I started working at the motel. I did everything, cleaning rooms, doing laundry, checking guests in. I worked 18-hour days, but I didn't complain. Every night, when everyone else was asleep, I'd sit at the front desk and study. I was fascinated by data, how numbers could tell a story. I taught myself everything I could about data architecture. A year into my new life, I suffered a huge setback. I lost the baby. The doctor said it was because of the extreme stress and malnutrition from those first few weeks on the streets. I was devastated, but I refused to let it break me. I channeled my grief into anger, and that anger fueled my determination. As the years went by, my skills in data architecture grew. I started getting small jobs, analyzing data for local businesses. Word spread, and soon I was in high demand. I founded Elysium Data Systems, and it took off like a rocket. By the time I was 30, I was a millionaire. By 35, I was one of the most respected names in the data analysis world. But I hadn't forgotten what my father had done. Before he kicked me out, he'd used my social security number to consign on a bunch of gambling debts and failing business loans. I knew I had to do something about it. So I started quietly buying up those debts. It cost me millions of my own hard-earned money. But I didn't care. I wanted to be free from him to make sure that when the time came, there was nothing he could hold over me. I also kept tabs on the Sterlings. Gregory's business was in shambles. He'd made a series of bad investments, and his company was on the verge of bankruptcy. Susan was still trying to keep up appearances, hosting charity galas with money they didn't really have. They were living on borrowed time, and I was the one holding the clock. Then the news broke about the Evelyn Foundation, a charity I'd set up in Evelyn's honor. It was getting a lot of media attention, and the Sterlings saw dollar signs. They showed up at my Seattle penthouse 24 years after they kicked me out. I saw them on the security monitor, Gregory and Susan, looking older, grayer, and desperate. Gregory said 4 words that made my blood run cold. "Let us see the child." I knew exactly what they were up to. They thought I had a child, and they wanted to use that child to save their failing reputation and get their hands on my money. I invited them in, playing along for a while. Susan started talking about a redemption campaign they planned with a PR firm called Silverline Media. She even showed me a glossy folder with their whole script for a miracle reunion. They said the world loved a comeback story, and they just needed to introduce the grandson to the public. I listened to them, my anger building. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I told them there was no child. The baby I'd been carrying had died 24 years ago in a charity clinic because of their neglect. They were shocked, but they didn't give up. They started gaslighting me, saying I was being cold-hearted, that I owed them. I didn't back down. I told them I'd spent 10 years paying off the debts Gregory had saddled me with. I had all the evidence. They tried to protest, but I wasn't listening. I knew I had to expose them for what they were. I called my lead investigator, Marcus. I told him I needed every bit of data on Silverline Media and Gregory's recent transactions. I also wanted to find Ethan. Within 48 hours, Marcus had delivered. It turned out that Gregory had been not just greedy, but criminal. He'd used the Sterling Family Trust, a fund that Evelyn had actually helped him set up decades ago, to funnel $1.2 million into a series of shell companies. He'd bribed Ethan to leave the state and pay Silverline Media for a Day of Red campaign to force me into a public reconciliation. If I refused, they were going to use forged documents to claim I was an unfit mother to a child they intended to find through a private adoption agency. They were going to buy a baby to replace the one I lost just to get their hands on my company. And the worst part? He'd forged my digital signature to release the funds. I worked with my legal team to build a case. We didn't just want to sue them. We wanted to put them away for good. We coordinated every detail, making sure we had all the evidence we needed. The day of reckoning came when Silverline Media was holding a private press briefing at a downtown hotel. Gregory and Susan were there, dressed to the nines, ready to tell their fake story to the world. I was in the back of the room, hidden in the shadows. When the time was right, I gave the signal. The soft music stopped, and the screen behind my father flickered. A security video from 2003 appeared. It showed Gregory and Susan in a notary's office, signing away their parental rights. The room gasped. Then Ethan's confession played, where he talked about how Gregory had paid him to leave. And finally, the forged wire transfer was shown on the screen. I walked up to the stage, took the microphone from my father's trembling hand. I told the press the truth about the Sterling name, how it was a legacy of fraud, forgery, and abandonment. I said there was no grandson, just a daughter they'd tried to erase. As I was speaking, 4 federal agents walked in. I filed a criminal complaint for forgery, wire fraud, and grand larceny. The agents arrested Gregory and Susan right then and there. Gregory lunged at me, shouting that I owed him everything. But I just looked at him and said, "According to the $50 you gave me in Columbus, I've already paid you back with interest. You're overdrawn, Gregory, and I'm closing the account." The press went wild. The story was all over the news. Gregory's real estate firm declared bankruptcy within a week. All his business partners came forward with their own stories of fraud. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison for wire fraud and forgery. Susan moved to a small, state-funded apartment in Arizona, far away from the social scene she'd once loved. After all this was over, I took a trip to the coast. I stood on the beach, looking out at the ocean. I reached into my pocket and pulled out that old, muddy $50 bill. It was a reminder of the past, of the pain and the struggle. But I no longer needed it. I let it go, watching as the wind carried it away and the waves swallowed it up. I realized that my life had been a long journey of self, discovery and growth. I'd built something amazing, not in spite of my past, but because of it. Family isn't about blood or a name. It's about the people who support you, who believe in you, like Evelyn. And if you've ever been in a situation where you've been left behind, know that you're not defined by who left you. You're defined by who you become when you decide to keep going. So that's my story, guys. I hope it inspires you to never give up on your dreams, no matter how hard life gets. And if you like this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share this story with your friends. Until next time, take care.